played that song.
Thanks to Starbucks.
Thanks to Starbucks. Well, we've got coffee, y'all, so tea, whatever you need, whatever it takes. So let's start. I'm gonna just up for me. Whether you want to, you can do it too. I'm gonna clear the space and connect to myself. So we connect to this saturated, damp earth from all the rain. We bring up the spring and we connect to ourselves. We connect to this community, to our teachers, to our unity movement and principles and teachings. And we just connect to all that is and bring it in. Here we are. Here we are. So, welcome Zoomers. Welcome first timers. Just so glad to see your faces this morning. So let us say our statement of being together. Together there is only one presence and one power active in my life and in the universe. God, the good, the omnipotent. So, well, we're getting kind of the tail end of these atmospheric rivers, but my son lives out in California, and so he was driving up to Tahoe in a blizzard. He told me after he did it, and then he gets there, and it was a wonderful snow day. He said, "You know, Mom, I calculated, and I looked at that weather. It was going to clear at noon." And sure enough, that's when they opened the lifts. And this is his truck. And I don't know, he's been up there many times, but look, that was buried. And can you get a sense of how deep the snowpack is? It's just amazing. And then that's, of course, Lake Tahoe. Just beautiful. I'm really jealous that he gets to do that, but I'm awfully glad I'm not shoveling snow and all that. I think I'll take our spring as it comes. He was going to go this weekend. There's another blizzard. He couldn't even begin to go this weekend. So there we have it. There we have it. But I'm just, aren't you loving it? I haven't seen the dogwood yet, but boy, the red buds are just, they're fabulous right now. So, today our daily word, well, in the daily word it is illuminate, but Paul Hasselbeck, and he was here last Sunday, he in the absolute word said it's light and understanding. And here's part of what he said, but I'm going to read the whole thing because I really enjoyed this particular one. In the moment, I appreciate the beauty of a sunset. In another part of the world, the first rays of a rising sun are lighting the morning sky. The sun never stops shining, nor does the light that God is. In his book, The Flow of Life, Eric Butterworth said, God is the light. You are in it. It is in you. It is the reality of you. God does not have light. God is light. Each of us is light. Not visible light, but the light of understanding. Sometimes my thoughts may be so focused on a challenge that I do not sense my light, my understanding. And then I breathe out frustration and worry. Breathing in, I remember I am light. So in a flash of understanding, that truth illuminates me and shines from my heart and mind. That is a really neat idea, to just pause, breathe out, and breathe in, and just remember. And somewhere you might connect, to that truth. So, it's a beautiful daily word. Let's begin a little bit with prayer too this morning. So in this time of prayer, I turn off all the devices and I click my own refresh button. As we begin, we are aware of our collective intention to refresh, reset, and renew. In this time of spring, we feel this renewal just beginning to happen. Breathing, we slow and still, linking all of us, our individuality, with that one mind. centered in the great source of all good, we can imagine and we open and we pray. So God is peace. Diving deeply within, I enter my sanctuary of peace. God is wisdom and understanding. I release any thought pattern that leads to worry or anxiousness, turning my mind to my own divinity. Divine wisdom is the way of intuition and discernment. Step by step, I confidently proceed. I am wise with the wisdom of infinite mind. If I just allow that, I allow it. God is life. I am one with this infinite life that is always in motion, always flowing forward, onward, upward. That spiral that expands, centered in one mind, one source of peace. May I consciously contribute to this world and be a blessing in it. I appreciate this community, this opportunity to share with you all. I appreciate all that Unity of Little Rock has been this year. And I hope that we can connect with each other in a beautiful, growing, supportive community. And we will. And so it is. So it is. So, we've been talking this Lenten season about fasting and feasting, and I want to go a little more into depth with that process. And I've said it's a balance in a both-and world. We're going to look at the non-duality of it, but it's really not so much as balancing as navigating it, and I hope we see that today. So, there are ups and downs in this process. We don't just say, oh, I'm going to release everything all at once. We don't just take the little Lenten book and go, okay, I'm letting go of fear, of indecision. It doesn't just happen just quite like that. So let's think about the process of that. But I've used this slide quite a bit, but I love it because this is related to Jesus' teaching that we withdraw, and this is important, we withdraw our attention and support, and that's a little gentler, that's like doable. Withdraw the attention and support from the false and what no longer serves us, and then put that attention and support on the enduring good, the powers that we know in our Unity Church, and anything that just lifts us up. So we'll be talking about that today. Well, really, fasting and feasting are like polarities, and I've talked about this before, but I love this topic. It's really fun to play with because, looking at fasting and feasting, it's not a problem. It's kind of, we need both things. Both things interact. It's like there's a world of differences, and we get to choose which way we're going to be. So is it going to be competing or cooperating? Is it going to be feasting or fasting? We get to choose. And there is a diversity in that, but also there's that tension between those two poles, And the tension is really kind of important because you need them both to get the wholeness, to get the truth. You can't just have one or the other. So we're going to move in this container here, and notice it's kind of the infinity sign. It sort of suggests energy and movement. That's the way we want to perceive it today. It's a container of attention and support and care. I really like that. So I'm going to start with a simple one, breathing. So we inhale and we exhale. You can't have one without the other. You can't just inhale and you can't just exhale. There needs to be that exchange. We take in the oxygen, we let out the carbon dioxide, at least, and the plants do it in reverse. It is a process. And notice how you can overdo it. So you can hold your breath if you inhale too long. You know, or you get too much carbon dioxide. And then, of course, we need to clean it out. That's the benefit. But if we exhale, and do you remember, I remember playing on the playground and we would try to faint and we would do this. Do you remember doing that? And
You're not gonna go there.
no. But you would exhale. And what you were doing is you were upsetting the balance in your body. I just remember doing that. Y'all never did that? Well, anyway. But the idea is you gotta have both, and it's just a balance. And you don't want to get caught up, though, in the swing. It's just a reminder that there's a dynamic energy in your life. So we identify the poles and we pull them apart. And then you see in the middle is a third way. And Richard Rohr talks about this a lot. The third way is a state that overcomes the contradiction of the two parts to find a reconciling third force that is bigger than either pole, and yet it excludes neither of them. You know, that's kind of a really good description of non-duality. It's a third force that is bigger than either of the opposites, but excludes neither of them. And the harmony creates a point from which real leverage can occur. So now, this is really important. The overuses are not bad per se. They are just the result of over-focusing on one pole or the other. You don't want to, obviously with this you wouldn't judge one as bad and one as good, but you don't want to get into judgment. You just remember that sometimes we over-focus on one or the other, and we have to get moving. Another example, there's so many physical examples, activity and rest. Let's say you're preparing for a marathon, and you can overdo it. First of all, you condition yourself, but you overdo it, you get achy muscles, you're exhausted. The benefit of the rest is you become rejuvenated, but if we do completely rest, there could be some atrophy or you get lethargic. So you see, that's sort of a simple physical one. And this happens in our bodies, like the muscles contract and relax. We take in nourishment, and then there's elimination. We have stages of activity and rest. So the tension is really part of our life force. This dynamic is just part of it. So let's look a little bit more at feasting and fasting. Now, this kind of takes on a human dimension of, eating. We talk about feasting and fasting. And when we feast together, we celebrate, and it's delicious. But when you take that extra bite that's just too much, it really doesn't feel so good. So we overindulge, and we gain weight. But with fasting, there is really healthy detoxing. It's okay and in fact, that's a popular thing now, to fast for, a few hours from the night into the morning. And we, of course, can lose unhealthy weight, but we could starve, we could get anorexic, we could have deficiencies. And so you see, nothing is either good or bad here. But of course, in Unity, we're talking about being metaphysical. We've got the Linton book that we're talking about. So what happens? Well, when we feast with our powers, or the 12 powers, or some unity principle, we celebrate, we raise consciousness. But, now this was hard to imagine, but we can't overindulge in a power. We really can, because order is one of the 12 powers. There it is. But we can become rigid in our order. You can overdo it, and we're over-focused. So with the fasting, while we release and we practice detachment, but if we just totally deny our humanity, like the ascetics, I think of John in the Bible, and they thrashed themselves and dressed in sackcloth. well, I don't have to fast that much from it. So at any rate, so I have learned about these polarities. I learned it in a C class with Kelly Isla, and she studied with Barry Johnson, and there's several books written on this, and they developed that polarity map together. I really enjoyed it, but it goes back a lot farther. I mean, I was looking at history of polarities, and first of all, there are so many disciplines that use that idea, because face it, opposites are just everywhere. So it could be in history and politics, in science, anywhere you want to look, is the idea of polarity. But in psychology, Carl Jung even talked about it, and he said that tension was really necessary. He said there is no energy unless there's a tension of opposites. Hence, it's necessary to discover the opposite to the attitude of the conscious mind. And I had to really look at that quote, and here's what it meant to me. It's like, okay, I'm more naturally a collaborative person, but I have to kind of examine the opposite I have to understand competition, because some people are that way, because opposites just do exist, and we may have a preference, but it is good to examine the other and to explore, because I think we're all about relationships here, and when we explore that relationship and that tension, we really learn a lot, and we're a lot more accepting. You're going to see that more today, I think. But according to Jung, it is learning to hold the tension of the opposites that makes us stretch and grow bigger. There is more space for seemingly opposite ideas and feelings and behaviors when we do that. And I do believe that. I've seen it. So let's look at another example of and this is a polarity map. This is one that I've used. It isn't the beautiful little lemniscape, but so what do we have here? Work and rest. Work and rest. Are you a workaholic, or do you just rest too much, or do you have a balance? Do you do both? So here, let's look at the benefits. So, whoops, go back. So the benefits of work, of course, we're productive, we're fulfilled, we make money, we're successful. But then if we overwork, well, we know what that is like. We are a workaholic. We're stressed, we're burned out, we might have poor relationships, we're overworked, we're not as creative as we could be, we may compromise our health. Now with rest, clearly we need to rest. We need those vacations. We need to be energized and to have time for relationships and our health and well-being. But if we overdo rest, we get inert, well then are we late? Maybe we're lazy. Maybe we just sit on that. Maybe we're couch potatoes. You don't feel as like you have as much purpose. Well, and really, maybe you're challenged with money. So we look at that and we travel. Now really we travel along the diagonals. So it's like, well, think about it. If you have overworked, then what are you going to look for? You're going to go up to the benefits of rest. But then if you stay there too long and you get lazy, then you might get motivated to work more. You see how it works? We don't just jump from side to side. We really are traveling along those diagonals. Traveling along the diagonals. And the deal is we want to think about what is the third way. So these are questions. What does it look like to integrate work and rest? Imagine that world. Well, we're already talking about a 4-day week. We've already started working at home. That's come out of the pandemic. We were working at home more. That could be, some people say it's restful, some not. But how are we going to integrate work and rest? That's what we want to look at. And then there is the vulnerability. As you're down in the overuses, what feels risky about holding work and rest together? what would you need to loosen up to allow both poles? What would you need to do to allow both of it? So the third way, and it's really not about strategies, it's more about how you show up. Supportive in teams, aware of self-care, get in the flow, value the process, not just the outcome in the work, for example. And the vulnerability is, well, are people going to think I'm lazy? Ooh, maybe I need to be perfectly imperfect here. I don't know how that comes together, but you can see how you need to really examine that third way. You know, Lorraine, I ran across this, and it's not in here, but I remember we did Wednesday workshops, and that was a couple of years ago, and you did a polarity map. Everyone did a polarity map, and I was reading through them. It was kind of interesting. You may have forgotten it because it's been a couple of years. Yes, she's going, oh, I slept since then, but we really did do this. It was really kind of fun. So. Well, see, here's the deal. What if you can see both sides of a problem? And as we Unitics expand, once we see it differently, we don't generally go back. Now, we may, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But once you see it a little bit differently, it just opens you up to possibilities. Now, the problems seem to require either or thinking. And to be sure, there are problems that you have to solve, and it can be important for survival. But the problem is we get so overtrained in either or thinking that, and this happens in school and growing up, in fact, we just sort of become masters of that. People draw lines, take sides, refuse to budge. They begin to think that their side is more important than the other person's side, or they're right and you're wrong. You get into those sorts of things. I mean, I'll do the math ed example first. All right, so in math ed, when I was teaching, there's this big controversy between basic skills, back to the basics, and problem solving. And of course, I lean toward problem solving. But you can't do the problem solving if you don't have the skills. I mean, you see, it really works together. But what happens in math ed is it seemed like it was more like a pendulum. It wasn't this lemniscate. We weren't looking at benefits of both. We were just swinging, okay, now we're going to do back to basics. Now we're going to do problems, and then so forth, and the pendulum swings. And I'm not going to get into politics here, but let's look at Republicans and Democrats, or liberals and conservatives, whatever you want to call it. Isn't it so sad? The whole thing is democracy. But what have we done? We've made enemy images out of the other guy, and we've just got this great divide. And we're thinking it has to be either or. And dear Lord, they got to get this a debt ceiling. We better have some, cooperation coming up. So at any rate, and I'm not going to say who's right and who's wrong, because really they're both right and they're both wrong. So that's just the way of that. But so we need to use our power of wisdom, that discernment, to decide whether something's a problem or simply a paradox. Have you ever asked that question? We think like politics is a problem. No. The thing is, you can't solve it because it's really polarities. It's really the paradox. It's really the combination of two opposites. So you can't solve it. So get over that. And we need to use our power of agency or dominion or mastery to see that the polarities, to see them as, you were talking about stepping back and witnessing, to step back and look at it, observe it, rather than being the subject to the polarities and getting caught up in it. Our thoughts and images and beliefs and experiences, y'all, they're like glasses we put on. They become filters. It becomes the way we see the world. And it shapes and tinges how we tend to act and receive things. And in fact, they talk about the suffering paradox. So if you refer to that diagram, you think about that lemniscate and those diagonals. One thing that we do is we have preferences. We value one pole over the other. That's just human nature. We're going to probably lean toward one or another. Then we could attach to the preference, and the preference becomes part of our personality. We define ourselves by that preference, and we get fixed. And then there's othering, and I've talked about that as, it says take the other to lunch. We did that the other one Sunday. The other pole is a threat to our identity. We make the other point of view wrong. And there's another one, either oring, and by that point, the lines are drawn, and now there's winners and losers, like a zero-sum game. That's just, so that's wonderful to be aware of. Now here is a really good example, and I know we talked about, we've in this Lent season, we've talked about different opposites, and one Sunday we talked about competition. So let's look. If some people are on this diagonal, some people really prefer to collaborate, and the benefits are wonderful. Connected relationships, generative ideas, and a buy-in. But the way that you, beware, don't look at it through the diagonal. You see what happens is when we prefer it, we look down to the other side and we say, well, if you're competitive, you're backstabbing and you don't share successes. But we forget that there really are benefits to competing. This person is just driven for excellence. They really want to contribute to the world, and they want it to be really good. And they work so effectively. They have some speed. And of course there is personal gain there, and that's okay. But that person who's competitive, so they look down at collaborative, and they see, oh, you've just got watered down solutions. You're slow. God, we have to please everyone when we do this. Dave.
Back to the slide before that, we were talking about suffering thing a little bit, and you said not either or whatever. But Jeannie, what is your aspect? What like one side is overwhelmingly, you know what I'm saying? I mean, they may not be equal, but you know what I'm saying?
I know.
That's what's hard to deal with.
It is hard to deal with. It is hard to deal with. And the other side has an impact.
Okay.
I get it. But the point
You said
is,
they're always equal, but you just don't see it. I'm not sure if I agree with that, but.
well, but from their point of view, see, Dave, and I don't want to get political.
Yeah, sure.
But the Republicans, they're thinking it, and they're looking down.
Yeah.
And then that's Democrats, we're looking down.
Yeah.
What if we understood that this is a dynamic process, and we shared, and we worked together? Anyway, I do understand what you say, but we've got to get beyond that field and meet ourselves,
Sure.
Where there is no right or wrong. It's hard though, it's a challenge. Well, there's a lot of things that I could talk about here. And I'm not going to do all of these. But I did want to talk about form and freedom. I was going to pick a few, and I didn't draw a slide for this. But I learned this polarity in Nia dance. But then it started applying to everything. So the form is the structure we need, and then there's the freedom. And I was helping a young student learn how to write an essay. And we had to learn the form of that essay. But once we understood the form, there was a lot of freedom in the writing. And taking it to the dance, once I know, and then we do 52 moves, once I know these moves real well and I know the choreography, then I am free to really express myself and really get into it. I was talking with somebody about teaching a young child to read. There is a form to learning to read, and there are certain, the phonics and whatever it is they have to do, and then they have to practice. You actually have to read to learn to read better. But guess what? You learn to read think of the choices now you have in the world, because you can read and you can study and you can get information. You have choices in career, in education, and then you have an enjoyment in life. Well, I happen to love reading at any rate. But, you know, do you see what I'm talking about here? In everything there is a form of freedom. I mean, even in our church, we've got bylaws, and we need to adhere to a system, you know, but then we do want the freedom that comes along with that, you know. Pay attention to those things. Can you all think of any other form of freedom?
It's basic in art.
Oh, yes, it
You have
is.
to learn the form before you can put your expression of that form out there.
Exactly. That's why you teach classes and yeah, that's exactly right. And we have protocols that we follow, but we don't have to be rigid in that. We need to allow for, you know, what comes up. When I was teaching, you can't go in with the perfect lesson plan and then just not paying attention to the students, you know, and then you've got to allow for what happens in the classroom. Form and freedom. I love this one. It's really a good one. Another one that I wanted to do was connection and loneliness. And this is one I found last night. I didn't think about this one. Let's see. I think I've got a slide for this. Do you know what? With COVID, we were forced into being alone. You know, we had to isolate. And yet connection is just really important to us. And that's kind of an interesting one. A lot of that was not our choice. And with connections, there's 3 spheres of connection: our intimate relationships, and then our friends and family, and then just at large community, just being out in public and being in public space. Going to a movie, we couldn't do that for quite a while. And
blame the government for isolating us.
Well, okay, we could go into that, but you know, it was really dire there, Ken, and we didn't do it perfectly. No, we didn't, and maybe we overdid things. Who knows? But it was such a new thing that was coming at us. We just really simply did the best that I feel like that we could. So now, but I don't want to get into politics of that, because that could be another discussion. But let's look. So connection, you know, really has a lot of upsides. Community, you're engaged, you're interested in life. Compassion, you've experienced compassion. But look, connection, all right, let's look at social media. Boy, that's connection, isn't it? Lots of it, and it's very distracting too. But then another side, you are vulnerable when you're in these connections, you know, and you got to deal with that. And that's not a bad thing necessarily, but truly you are vulnerable. I was thinking something else about this social media connections, but I can't remember what I said this morning. But anyway, now in the alone time, I said loneliness. Well, that's what we kind of got out of the pandemic. But I put alone loneliness, because, you know, y'all, I like my me time. I need that. See, it's not, I can't, connections are fabulous, but I think that's that part of that rest that we need. So the me time, and then there's stillness. And I'm just going to let it be quiet for a while.
Because you really poured it out.
And then it was beautiful.
I did that last week. You had poured it out, and it was like you had drained your body. And the only thing I do is just sit there and rest.
Well, it is true.
I will feel so good.
Well, it is true. Yeah, and I go home and I often take a delicious Sunday nap, but then and there's really, you get clarity when you can be with yourself, and there is safety in just being alone. or maybe you could question that if you're scared of being alone, I don't know. There's sadness, that's the downside, and I don't know, you get passive about life. I was trying to think of the words, but there has to be, like Goldilocks, there has to be a just right in there, you know, because we need both. So,
You know, yesterday in the 40 days of letting go,
Yeah.
it was on loneliness. And
Yes.
I love what she said. She said that loneliness is an opportunity for resourcefulness. For how can I connect with people? Who do I need to call? Who can I go visit? Who, you know, and I thought that was a great aspect, and I love that resourcefulness when we're feeling lonely.
right, I think oh, yeah, I got it from another one deal. But you're really right about that when you're alone, and then you really can reflect. And these are some interesting questions when you're alone. Think about this. Is your life centered more on people or on tasks? That's a good question.
That's,
And, you know, doing things. Is it more on being with people or just doing things? So if you think about COVID, because we're really kind of recovering from COVID, look at what has changed and how it has impacted you. What roles are gone? What roles in your life have changed? That's an interesting question. Where and with whom do you execute these roles? Like, do you have a role of a caregiver? Did you drop that? Maybe you had a best friend, but suddenly you lost a connection there. I can't think of other roles, but I know I quit going to the Little Rock Athletic Club, and I had a lot of connections there. And so, you know, as a participant of that, that changed. So looking at what changed from the COVID to now is really pretty interesting. And then, so look at those three circles: the intimate, the friends, the relational, and then the collective circle, which would be the community. What changed in those circles? You might have gotten closer to family, for example. Maybe you got more, closer to a partner, or maybe that ended in COVID. I don't know. It could have gone either way, So I thought those were really interesting questions. And Travis, I'm glad you pointed that out, because loneliness is in the 40-day booklet. But I read these affirmations. I give no power to ideas that keep me separate from others. I am free from old beliefs that have limited my ability to recognize our shared humanity and commonality. And then, as I love and accept myself, I'm able to see that I have infinite possibilities for connection in my life. I reach out to others with a generosity of spirit. And I'm just going to say real quickly, we're kind of wrapping up spirit groups, and I've just been amazed at what we've learned about each other just by being in person. It's just a different flavor of connection. So, yet another one, remember the movie, Joy? I'll talk about Inside Out. So we have joy, but the opposite of joy was not fear, but sadness. But yet they both needed, if you remember the plot of this movie that I talked about, they needed sadness to resolve the issues with the little girl. So they went together. They really do go together. So, I want to look this up in the book. The book talks not about sadness, but sorrow. And it says, when sorrow visits, I bless it. I thank it for its message and gently release it. Sorrow or sadness reminds me that I've experienced something that I valued. I've lost something that I valued. While not resisting, and that's important, you've got to own the feeling. While not resisting my feelings, I remember that our way shower taught us that solace comes from turning within and connecting to spirit, where we always receive comfort, love, and strength. So sorrow and joy intertwine. Without sorrow, I would not recognize joy. Sorrow carves the path for joy to emerge. And you notice I put in the middle bittersweet. Remember I talked about that a couple of weeks ago, and they said that sadness was really the impetus to get compassion. not sharing, not always sharing the celebrations, but sharing the sadness. So that was kind of interesting. So now in unity, we have what's called divine paradoxes. And this is in Paul's book, Heart-Centered Metaphysics. And so we, a lot of us, we say God is principle. Myrtle said that. That's, when you come out of a traditional background, that's a hard one to think about, because you think of God as this personal relationship. And so that is kind of, the principle and the personal. And then there's the immanent, the indwelling Christ, and then the God beyond, the transcendent. So that's two poles. Divinity, the Father and the Mother, but we say Father, Mother, God sometimes. And law and grace. And now these are just mine, but I thought of a third way for these. The third way between principle and personal is just, it's all-encompassing, the allness of God. And if we're looking at the inner and then the God beyond, well, that's just oneness to me. And then if we have Father, if we look at the feminine and the masculine, then we look at the union, because all of us contain the feminine and the masculine. And if we look, there is law, there is principle, and there's always grace. And then that is love, to put that together. And law and grace is really that form and freedom in a way, too. So that's important. So in closing, we've talked a lot about this third way. And this third way is a commitment to personal growth and being with the truth of interdependent relationship. So we develop clarity and stability and presence. We don't want to just be swept through this cycle that I kept showing y'all, the lemniscate. We really want to be conscious of what's going on and having an awareness. To always ride this loop is to have those ups and downs, and conflicts are going to come up. The third way is a place of trust and courage indeed, and love. It's the way of the Christ consciousness, to ride it with care, not to just let it take you on its journey. Ride it with care. And I love this from Richard Rohr. He says, we stand in the middle, neither taking the world on from another power position, nor denying it for fear of the pain it could bring. We hold the hardness of reality and the suffering of the world until it transforms us, knowing that we are both complicit, and we are, in evil, and but we can participate in wholeness and holiness. Once we can stand in that third spacious way, neither directly fighting nor fleeing, we are in the place of grace, out of which genuine newness can come. This is where creativity and new forms of life and healing emerge. That third way. And it's you can just take any pair of opposites and just think to yourself, what is the third way? Where am I on that lemniscate, that infinity sign? Am I up here with the benefits? Am I writing down? Where am I? And what is the third way? How can I integrate these poles in my life? Yeah, thank you.